I'm Pranamya and you're watching Pages of the Globe. So if you're new to my channel, I essentially talk about short stories and sometimes poems. I'll tell you a little bit about the author, some of the historical situations, so when the book was published, why it matters, why that time period matters, and then I'll give you an in-depth analysis of the story. I'll tell you a little bit about the symbolism, some motifs that are present, themes. I'll give you a character analysis on every single main character there is, no matter how many main characters there are. If you've ever heard me read The Orientation by Daniel Orozco, you know that I will give you an analysis over every single character, no matter how many there are. I will talk about any underlying message, perhaps any controversies that surrounded the story when it first came out, things like that. So today, the short story that I will be reading to you is called The Sniper by Liam O'Flaherty. He is an Irish writer, or he was an Irish writer. He was born in 1896 and he passed away in 1984. The Sniper is a very, very interesting short story. It is probably, I'm not going to say it's one of my favorites, but it is very interesting. It is a short story set in the Irish Civil War, and it follows a Republican sniper who is positioned at this rooftop, and he and this other enemy sniper are essentially in like a duel with each other, or in a battle, and they're aiming at each other and they're trying to kill one another. And over the course of a single evening, we see kind of what events unfold, and then there's a shocking twist at the end. So I don't want to reveal too much of the story, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the author, Liam O'Flaherty. So, as I said before, this short story was set in the Irish Civil War, and this is very, very important to the story, the historical context of the story. So first I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the author, right? He was born in Inishmore, which is the largest of Aran Islands off the west coast of Ireland. So he was born in Ireland. He was raised in a Gaelic-speaking Catholic family, and he was immersed in Irish oral traditions and folklore. He studied at Rockwell College and then later on University College in Dublin, where he actually studied priesthood before shifting to secular and political interests. As for his military experience and trauma, which is very important in the story, he fought in World War I as a soldier in the British Army, the Irish Guards, and there he suffered severe shell shock, which is now known as PTSD, after being wounded in France. This experience deeply, deeply affected him and influenced a lot of his writing, particularly his anti-war stance. He had a very strong anti-war stance, which is apparent in this story. As for his political involvement, he was active in left-wing politics, particularly Marxist and socialist causes. He took part in revolutionary movements during the Irish Civil War, and in 1922 he was involved in the short-lived occupation of the Rotunda in Dublin, which was an attempt by Irish communists to ignite a workers' uprising. He is best known for The Sniper, published in 1923, which was published pretty early on in his career. It was published right after the Irish Civil War began, which I want to say was 1922 to 1923, but it might have been 1923 to 1924. Either way, it was early 1920s. His writing often explored themes of violence, trauma, alienation, Irish identity, and the conflict between traditional values and modernity. Novels like The Informer, published in 1925, and Return of Brute, published in 1929, received critical acclaim for their dark psychological realism and political commentary. The Informer actually won the James Tate Black Memorial Prize and was adapted into an Oscar-winning film by John Ford that was released in 1935. As for his style and legacy, he is often actually compared to Ernest Hemingway, and because they both have this like sparse, powerful prose and psychological depth. He combined modernist techniques with traditional Irish storytelling, and his short stories, particularly The Sniper, are widely studied for their direct, brutal depictions of conflict and moral ambiguity. As for later life and death, he later distanced himself from active politics. He died in Dublin at the age of 88, and though he wasn't always in the literary mainstream, he He is now recognized as a significant voice in specifically Irish literature, especially for his portrayals of war and ideological struggle. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.
The Sniper by Liam O'Flaherty. The long June twilight faded into night. Dublin lay enveloped in darkness, but for the dim light of the moon that shone through the fleecy clouds, casting a pale light as of approaching dawn over the streets and the dark waters of the Liffey. Around the beleaguered four courts, the heavy guns roared. Here and there through the city, machine guns and rifles broke the silence of the night, spasmodically, like dogs barking on lone farms. Republicans and Free Starters were waging civil war. On a rooftop near O'Connell Bridge, a Republican sniper lay watching. Beside him lay his rifle over his shoulders, was slung a pair of field glasses. His face was the face of a student, thin and ascetic, but his eyes had the cold gleam of the fanatic. They were deep and thoughtful, the eyes of a man who is used to looking at death. He was eating a sandwich hungrily. He had eaten nothing since morning. He had been too excited to eat. He finished the sandwich and, taking a flask of whiskey from his pocket, he took a short draught. Then he returned the flask to his pocket. He paused for a moment, considering whether he should risk a smoke. It was dangerous. The flash might be seen in the darkness, and there were enemies watching. He decided to take the risk. Placing a cigarette between his lips, he struck a match, inhaled the smoke hurriedly, and put out the light. Almost immediately, a bullet flattened itself against the parapet of the roof. The sniper took another whiff and put out the cigarette. Then he swore softly and crawled away to the left. Carefully, he raised himself and peered over the parapet. There was a flash, and a bullet whizzed over his head. He dropped immediately. He had seen the flash. It came from the opposite side of the street. He rolled over the roof to a chimney stack in the rear and slowly drew himself up behind it until his eyes were level with the top of the parapet. There was nothing to be seen, just the dim outline of the opposite housetop against the blue sky. His enemy was under cover. Just then an armored car came across the bridge and advanced slowly up the street. It stopped on the opposite side of the street 50 yards ahead. The sniper could hear the dull panting of the motor. His heart beat faster. It was an enemy car. He wanted to fire, but he knew it was useless. His bullets would never pierce the steel that covered the gray monster. Then, round the corner of the side street, came an old woman, her head covered by a tattered shawl. She began to talk to the man in the turret of the car. She was pointing to the roof where the sniper lay. An informer. The turret opened. A man's head and shoulder appeared, looking toward the sniper. The sniper raised his rifle and fired. The head fell heavily on the turret wall. The woman darted toward the side street. The sniper fired again. The woman whirled round and fell with a shriek into the gutter. Suddenly, from the opposite roof, a shot rang out, and the sniper dropped his rifle with a curse. The rifle clattered to the roof. The sniper thought a noise would wake the dead. He stooped to pick the rifle up. He couldn't lift it. His forearm was dead. "I'm hit," he muttered. Dropping flat onto the roof, he crawled back up to the parapet. With his left hand, he felt the injured right forearm. The blood was oozing through the sleeve of his coat. There was no pain, just a deadened sensation as if the arm had been cut off. Quickly, he drew his knife from his pocket, opened it on the breastwork of the parapet, and ripped open the sleeve. There was a small hole where the bullet had entered. On the other side, there was no hole. The bullet had lodged in the bone. It must have fractured it. He bent the arm below the wound. The arm bent back easily. He ground his teeth to overcome the pain. Then, taking out his field dressing, he ripped open the packet with his knife. He broke open the neck of the iodine bottle and let the bitter fluid drip into the wound. A paroxysm of pain swept through him. He placed the cotton wadding over the wound and wrapped the dressing over it. He tied the ends with his teeth. Then he lay still against the parapet, and closing his eyes, he made an effort of will to overcome the pain. In the street, beneath all, was still. The armored car had retired speedily over the bridge, with the machine gunner's head hanging lifeless over the turret. The woman's corpse lay still in the gutter. The sniper lay still for a long time, nursing his wounded arm and planning escape. Morning must not find him wounded on the roof. The enemy on the opposite roof covered his escape. He must kill that enemy, and he could not use his rifle. He had only a revolver to do it. Then he thought of a plan. Taking off his cap, he placed it over the muzzle of the rifle. Then he pushed the rifle slowly upward over the parapet until the cap was visible from the opposite side of the street. Almost immediately there was a report, and a bullet pierced the center of the cap. The sniper slanted the rifle forward. The cap clipped down into the street. Then, catching the rifle in the middle, the sniper dropped his left hand over the roof and let it hang lifelessly. After a few moments, he let the rifle drop to the street. Then he sunk to the roof, dragging his hand with him. Crawling quickly to his feet, he peered up at the corner of the roof. His ruse had succeeded. The other sniper, seeing the cap and rifle fall, thought he had killed his man. He was now standing before a row of chimney pots, looking across with his head clearly silhouetted against the western sky. The Republican sniper smiled and lifted his revolver above the edge of the parapet. The distance was about 50 yards, a hard shot in the dim light, and his right arm was paining him like 1,000 devils. He took a steady aim. His hand trembled with eagerness. Pressing his lips together, he took a deep breath through his nostrils and fired. He was almost deafened with the report, and his arm shook with the recoil. That's when the smoke cleared and he peered across and uttered a cry of joy. His enemy had been hit. He was reeling over the parapet in his death agony. He struggled to keep his feet, but he was slowly falling forward as if in a dream. The rifle fell from his grasp and hit the parapet, fell over, bounded off the pole of the barber's shop beneath, and then clattered on the pavement. Then the dying man on the roof crumpled up and fell forward. The body turned over and over in space and hit the ground with a dull thud. Then it lay still. The sniper looked at his enemy falling, and he shuddered. The lust of battle died in him. He became bitter by remorse. The sweat stood out in beads on his forehead, weakened by the wound and the long summer day of fasting, and watching on the roof he revolted from the sight of the shattered mass of his dead enemy. His teeth chattered, and he began to gibber to himself, cursing the war, cursing himself, cursing everybody. He looked at the smoking revolver in his hand, and with an oath, he hurled it to the roof at his feet. The revolver went off with a concussion, and the bullet whizzed past the sniper's head. He was frightened back to his senses by the shock. His nerves steadied. The cloud of fear scattered from his mind, and he laughed. Taking the whiskey flask from his pocket, he emptied it a draught. He felt reckless under the influence of the spirit. He decided to leave the roof now and did not look for his company commander to report. Everywhere around was quiet. There was not much danger going in through the streets. He picked up his revolver and put it in his pocket. Then he crawled down through the skylight to the house underneath. When the sniper reached the laneway on the street level, he felt a sudden curiosity as to the identity of the enemy sniper who he had killed. He decided that he was a good shot, whoever he was. He wondered, did he know him? Perhaps he had been in his own company before the split in the army. He decided going over to have a look at him. He peered around the corner into O'Connell Street. In the upper part of the street there was a heavy firing, but all around here it was quiet. The sniper darted across the street. A machine gun tore up the ground around him with a hail of bullets, but he escaped. He threw himself face downward beside the corpse. The machine gun stopped. Then the sniper turned over the dead body and looked into his brother's face. The end. Alright, so that was The Sniper by Liam O'Flaherty. Now this, like I said before, is a short story set during the Irish Civil War, and it follows a Republican sniper who is positioned on this rooftop in Dublin. And so over the course of an evening, he engages in this battle or a duel, whatever you want to call it, with an enemy sniper across the street, only to discover at the end that that sniper was actually his brother. So this story is kind of just trying to expose the brutal consequences of war, specifically when it comes to civil conflict. So I'm going to be honest. First, I just want to talk about some of my personal thoughts about this story. When I first was just doing my quick overview of the story, I was so confused. I was like, was this story written right now? Is it trying to,
comment about something that's happening right now, because I felt that it was it was something that could be very applicable to, I guess, the situation right now happening in America. However, I was very shocked after I did my preliminary research to learn that this was actually a story set quite a while ago, and not in America, in Ireland. And this was also a very familiar story to me. If you have, listened to videos from my channel before, and if you've ever heard about the short story The Mockingbird by Ambrose Bierce, you know that in that story, it's so, so good. And it is almost, it's almost the exact same as The Sniper, except it is also completely different in the way that it's literally, the plot line is the exact same, but it is set in the American Civil War, and it's the way that it is written is very different, obviously, because it was written a much longer time before The Sniper, I believe. But, it has very, very, exact same plot line. And what's so interesting to me is that both of these stories were written in such different parts of time. And I thought that one of them was actually written right now. So that's 2025 compared to the Civil War. The Irish Civil War happened in in the early 1920s, and then the American Civil War started in early 1860s. So that's 1860s, 1920s, and 2020s. Those are two very, very, very different times and periods of time. However, they all kind of have they have similar themes to it, right? And that's shown in this story, I would say, and in The Mockingbird. So for a quick thematic analysis, what are some of the themes we see in the story? So first of all, obviously, the horrors of war, right? At its core, what is the story? It's just a depiction of how war really strips people of their humanity. Because this sniper, that we're seeing, he's not some superhero. And he's not this amazing, proper, glorified general. He seems to be a very gaunt, hardened, and very traumatized, I would almost say, by the experience of killing people, and the story it shows war as something that's very dehumanizing, which, because we see that through the sniper is willing to kill without hesitation. He even shoots this old woman who's acting as an informant. Even towards the end, when he's oh, I'm gonna go check out who I killed because I might know him, that is you could have known this person was actually your family, but you killed him without hesitation. And I'm not gonna blame him for that, obviously. I just think war is something that truly changes people, and that happened back then, and it happens even now. We see with things like PTSD, it can really change a person. Another theme I kind of want to touch on is I guess the symbolism of civil war, right? Specifically the Irish Civil War, where friends, neighbors, and then families, we see in the story, families were divided by political lines, The fact that the enemy sniper is the brother, that's not just there for a twist, right? Or a shocking ending to the story. It is a metaphor. Civil wars are wars of kin. This is a quote from somewhere, I guess. Civil wars are wars of kin. And so what that is fratricide. And that makes the story's message all the more tragic, because war truly pits loved ones against each other. And it's to the point where even victory, even one side winning, still feels a loss, still feels like despair. Yes, this man was able to kill his enemy sniper, but at what cost? He just killed his brother. He just killed his closest family member. Another thing I wanted to touch on, another theme, was desensitization and trauma. At the beginning, we see the sniper is almost mechanical in his killing. But after shooting his brother, and this is actually, he doesn't even know this is his brother at the time. He just thinks he's shooting someone. As soon as he does it, he feels sick and guilty, right? There's a little quote, it says, "The lust of battle died in him, he became bitter by remorse." He immediately is oh my God, I just, killed someone. And at the time, he doesn't even know it's his brother. At the time, he thinks it's an enemy. So this kind of shows us, like, what is happening in our brains during combat, The sniper only becomes human again after the thrill of violence has, like, faded and remorse has truly set in. So I feel like this, juxtaposition truly shows how trauma sneaks up on soldiers in this case. And obviously I can't really speak to, what truly goes on in a soldier's mind, because I am, a 16-year-old girl who has never been in war. However, I think just reading about this was like, it felt so real, and I could truly understand because, or I was trying to do my best to understand. I could never truly understand that this man, he, in his mind, he's like, I have to kill this person, in order to save whatever I believe in. However, at the same time, he's not evil, he's not a truly terrible man who just wants to kill people. He just feels that he needs to in order for good to come about. So I want to talk about this. I want to go deeper into this character. So the sniper, right? He is, first of all, he's never named. And I will always say, in a story, if you ever notice that there is a main character who is not being named, there is a reason for it. So the sniper, he is never named, right? And this, anonymousness, the correct word is anonymity, it makes him a symbol for all soldiers, right? That way, because he's young, right? He's seemingly young. It's not like he's old, but he is experienced in war. That is, I feel like that's pretty clear. And he's very emotionally detached until the story's final moments. We only see his inner conflict emerge after he has killed someone. He smokes even though it might reveal his position, which shows his recklessness, and I feel like that kind of shows his how he is young. But it also kind of shows his numbness to danger, right? If it were me, I would not be thinking I really need to smoke right now. I don't care. I'm just going to do it. If I know there's a chance I'm going to get shot at and killed. But he is literally risking exposure just to do that. And then he also risks exposure to kill an informer, the old woman, right? And another enemy, which I feel kind of hints at a death wish or almost fatalism. He's okay, you know what? I'm gonna keep taking these risks. And to me, that seems like someone who takes a lot of risks with their lives when it's not necessary. To me, that is someone that doesn't care as much about their life. And I don't mean for those of you who skydive or do bungee jumping. That's not really truly risking your life. I mean, in this case, when this soldier has one clear assignment, right, which is simply kill this enemy sniper, but he's doing so much other stuff that yes, might help his cause, but it's also it's not as important in the grand scheme of things. And so to me, it's he just doesn't value his life as much. And, he is obviously a very efficient killer. He's incredibly skilled. The way he fakes his death, it's all very, very skillful, right? But he's not heartless. He's not this, evil guy, like I said before. His breakdown after killing the enemy shows that it's not his empathy is gone. It's just been buried under layers of survival instinct and, I might even say, indoctrination. So, what is some symbolism? Well, first of all, we have the rooftop. What does the rooftop represent? I would say, first of all, it represents isolation, right? But it also represents an advantage. So first of all, it's a vantage point for killing, right? Both enemy snipers are on it. But at the same time, it's a place of danger and exposure. Because if you come even a little bit up, you're gone, right? Because there's so much light behind you that your silhouette will be illuminated. Another thing is that you are completely alone, right? The sniper is literally and figuratively alone. He has been cut off from human connection, obviously, and then he's also surrounded by death. So, then the cigarette. What is the cigarette? Why is he lighting a cigarette? Honestly, I was kind of unsure about this. It could just be that he wanted to smoke, but I will always say there is symbolism in everything, even if the writer didn't mean to put symbolism in there. I would say, and actually, I don't think that's true. Sorry, I am literally going off a little bit off course here, but I just need to rant about this because I see a lot of people say, like, you can't find symbolism in everything because half the time the writer probably didn't even mean to do that. But that's not true. Let's say I'm a writer, right? And I am writing about something. And so let's say I was writing this story and I wrote about the cigarette. Yes, maybe in my mind I'm thinking, this cigarette is just like something I can imagine this character doing in my head. But why am I, as the author, imagining this specific character lighting a cigarette? That's me showing a personality trait, or maybe not, just a regular character trait of this sniper. And so now when the reader reads it, they will say, I wonder why the author said that this sniper is lighting a cigarette. Why would this author think that this character would smoke a cigarette at this moment of time? Well, perhaps it's because, in my opinion, a cigarette is just, this sniper is clinging to normalcy, right? Even in the recklessness of the face of war, it's this very human moment in an inhuman world. But it almost gets him killed, right? It shows you can't have any vulnerable moments because it will literally put you in danger. And so in the author's mind, maybe he didn't think that this is what the cigarette means, but he did think this is something the character would do. This is something that he would be driven to do. Even if he knew that it was going to kill him, he would still do it. And so as a reader, I'm going to say, okay, why did the author think that that's something the character would do? Because the actual true character can only be seen by the author, right? So I'm going to say, okay, well, perhaps, if I'm putting myself in this character's shoes, it might be because so-and-so. Now, last symbol I want to talk about is the brother. This is like the ultimate symbol, right? The enemy sniper being his brother kind of like encapsulates the story's anti-war message. This has a very clear anti-war message. And it is that war turns family members into enemies and makes, any type of reconciliation impossible. Now, just to finish this off with some historical context, Liam O'Flaherty, he, like I said before, was a veteran of World War I, so he has had firsthand experience with violence, with war trauma, and political unrest. And the story is set during the Irish Civil War, specifically, which was a conflict between the pro-treaty forces who accepted the Anglo-Irish Treaty and anti-treaty forces who rejected it. And O'Flaherty was aligned with the leftist politics. And he was most probably critical of the war's nature of, splitting families apart, making people kill their families, kill their loved ones. And so this context deeply informs the story. It's not just about killing someone. It's about the pain of killing someone who was once a part of your world. The war divided communities, and the sniper truly captures that with in 3 or 4 pages. So, final message, what is it? Well, first of all, I want to say this again. This wasn't just a twist ending, It isn't just this shocking thing. It is a truly devastating piece of information. And it kind of suggests that no matter what side you're on, you're going to lose when violence is the language of resolution. It also shows us how easy it is to kill in war, but it is impossible to live with the consequences. We'll see soldiers come back from, tours and, dangerous situations, and they'll be so messed up in the head because, yes, in the moment, perhaps they were able to kill many hundreds of people, but it's not like they're truly terrible people who enjoy it or can do it with feeling no emotion. It's killing someone happens in a few seconds, right? This sniper died in maybe 30 seconds tops. However, now the other sniper will have to live with that for the rest of his life. And that is a truly haunting message, I think. And yeah, that is the end of this video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to hear next. And if you enjoyed this, check out The Mockingbird by Ambrose Bierce. It is quite short and it is quite good.